Again, I'm just it's single state nigga. Wie sick with being nigga na single state. When you go around the yeah. Right, sure.
Same thing. The ashes I used to do it 3 times, 5 times, 8 times.
And my son-in-law. I just want to, before we start into the main part of the event, which is about Chof, the Hilul of the Rebbe Levi, and also yartzait Hilul of my grandson.
He didn't wait for the
son.
Yeah, he didn't wait.
Tonight happens to be.
You just say good shoes. You didn't wait for the shoes.
Oh,
You asked me for the shoes.
I'm asking for shoes. Okay.
You know.
Okay, I'll rewind.
He's like,
We're already.
I can't.
We're already.
Too funny about
Okay.
Start all over. It's Chof Av. And before you say anything else about anything else, we have to talk about Chof Av. That's the beginning.
Okay.
So those things can come in afterwards, but let's not forget about the Rebbe's Amoisid. The Rebbe's Amoisid is the Rebbe Abalabos, and the Rebbe's Abalabos. You know what I mean? Let's not. At the same time, we have to recognize that, wow, it's so special. At the same time, on Chof Av, we have some other things as well. And that's another source that we have. You know what I mean? But continue, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll wait till later.
Continue.
No, I'll wait till later. I don't want to interfere with what's supposed to be the proper.
Now you say L'chaim. Jetzt können wir sagen,
Now we can say L'chaim. Okay, so let's say at least L'chaim. L'chaim. Since everybody's so rushed to get started, you realize the
I'm not sorry.
I'm going to say it's from. Hi, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. As we all know, all of us know, yesterday was a very special day in the world. Yesterday was the yartzait of the Rebbe. The yartzait of the Rebbe's father. And what's interesting about it, about the yartzait of the Rebbe's father, on the one hand, the Rebbe's father was a Rebbe. But at the same time, he was the Rebbe's father. And how can we relate to something like that? So it's interesting. And the Rebbe, and I remember this at one farbrengen, that the Rebbe actually used the expression.
Can't hear sound. Can't hear any sound.
The only one that was left in Russia able to lead the Yiddishkeit that continued in Russia was the Rebbe, my father, and he was the only one as a direct descendant of the Rebbe that was there in Russia to continue to lead Russia. So, from some perspective, and furthermore, as we saw at the farbrengens, and so many farbrengens that the Rebbe shared with us, the Rebbe, as he mentioned all the Rabbeim, would most often mention the Rebbe's father as well, and good reference to the Rebbe's father. And as he sang the Gomel from all the Rabbeim, also sang anything from the Rebbe's father. So from that perspective, we have a special relationship with the Rebbe's father in terms of the message and the lesson and the inspiration that we all ought to have on the day of the yartzait of the Rebbe's father. And I just wanted to mention very briefly, when we talk about the lessons, so obviously we all know that Rebbe's father, in addition to being a lawyer, yes, in every part of Torah, particularly his values was in the area of Kabbalah, in the Kabbalistic aspects of Torah. But what the Rebbe did for us is, Rebbe's father wasn't just another Kabbalist. There are so many Kabbalists that they don't have so many today. You find many Kabbalists. and they start telling you everything that story that Kabbalah teaches about, and you sit down next to them and they will share with you some quotes of Kabbalah. The Rebbe shared with us that the Kabbalah that the Rebbe's father taught us, and shared with us, but the Rebbe's father was teaching us in Betzivos, that just as we have the revealed aspect of Torah, I mean, Siddur inspires us and shows us how in every area of the revealed aspect of Torah, there is the previous Torah, the deeper secrets of Torah, the inspirations of Torah, and everything that Torah inspires us with, and enables us to live with it, so that we learn about whatever is in the story in Torah. It's not just another story. It could be an interesting story. There's a lot of books, stories of the Talmud. We read a nice, beautiful story. It might even be a bedtime story that we can tell our children. But the Rebbe shows us what Chassidic teaches us is that all of those stories have a much deeper aspect, a much deeper understanding, and it's our job to understand what the meaning of that is. It's not just talking about two people arguing about, I found something in the street. Is it mine? Is it yours? So, Chassidic teaching us as an example of that. Chaim is the Dallas. It tells us about that this is a relationship to a concept of where two Nishanas, when they come up above, are arguing about the ridiculous spark of godliness as to who was the one that brought back to godliness. Was I the one that awakened within that spark, that connection to Hashem, or were you the one? Maybe both of us were the one. But it's not just another story about something physical, a physical object. So that's what Chassidic shares with us, how every part of Torah, every Muslim and foolish has a much deeper aspect of it, a much deeper understanding. And often, if you don't learn Chassidic, you can't understand the simple explanation of a Muslim and foolish. You can fool yourself in saying, oh, I get it, but if you sit down with it truly, there's a lot of things that are very difficult to understand just from simply explaining and understanding the meaning of the word. You have to understand the deeper meaning of it and what it really means to all of us, and the lesson is for all of us. So similarly, the Rebbe taught us that when the Rebbe Levi shared with us the Kabbalah aspects, which is the kind of thing that very few, even great people had any understanding of. But the Rebbe Levi, many of his teachings, or the majority of his teachings, everything that we have from Rebbe Levi is all about Kabbalah. Everything. Rebbe Levi writes a letter. He writes a letter and he explains how what his name implies, talks about his own name. And he talks about his being Golos, his being sent away. So he talks about what his name represents and why he was sent away and what it all meant to him and the lesson that he took from it. And so too for everything. It's interesting that of all the teachings, Rebbe Levi was a Rav. He was a rabbi in the largest shul in Ukraine. This was back in the early 1920s. Actually, he became a Rav in, I think it was 1907. He became a Rav 1909. He became a Rav in Ukraine. And that was then one of the largest shuls in Ukraine. Ukraine was sort of like the capital, the Gabakrinishlov, where the Rebbe's father was the Rav. It was sort of the capital certainly from the perspective of Yiddishkeit in the entire Ukraine, which was northern Russia. And at that point, there were all kinds of Jews, from the simple Jews to the learned Jews to the genius Jews. They all participated in that shul. And for all the years that he was, it was only the last 4 years that Rebbe's father was sent away in Alma Ata. And when he was sent away in Alma Ata, when he was sent away in Golos, he was sent away from the city, away from the Jews, and to a place where nobody was there, no Jews were there. his writings too, as we see often, where some of the things that are in Russia that we don't have, over the years, they slowly, all of a sudden, oh, we found another writing that was found somewhere in the library of who knows where. But the Rebbe used the expression was, we don't yet have it, but there's so much more. This is only for the last 40 years. I want to do a notes, and what do you write about? Kabbalah issues. And the Rebbe, with every Shabbos, would, during the farbrengen, sit down and quote what the Rebbe's father writes and said, you know, what does that mean to us? How is this relevant to all of us? It's Kabbalah. What does it mean for us? He wrote it down, he explained it, and he knew that we were going to be learning it. And as the Rebbe always used the expression that if my father knew, or he said it out of the here, but I was going to get hold of it, he knew that I was going to make it public. And if I'm going to make it public, then I would say, I have to make sure everybody understands this and everybody can relate to it. And then I would go on to explain, like a pasuk of Chumash, all the Kabbalistic aspects that the Rabbi Levi writes about. So, Rabbi Levi, in writing about all of those things, the bottom line, as the Rebbe says, the message of the lesson, because the Rebbe told many stories about the Rabbi Levi also. He shared many stories, and you can hear it. Today we have all the tapes for the Rebbe's farbrengens, and you can have, if you want to press a button, you can hear with somebody put together all the stories that the Rebbe tells about the Rebbe's father. You can listen to them one after another from so many different farbrengens. But the bottom line of all of those stories is, what the Rebbe shares with us, the lesson that we ought to be taking from the Rebbe's father is that no matter what the difficulties, no matter what the challenges are, and were, obviously, the Rebbe's father lived through many challenges, and because he was sent away, he ended up dying in Al-Mahada, and was buried in the cemetery of so many Goyim. An unbelievable situation for this great Gomel Hador, this great giant in a community that everybody respected, but the Rebbe wanted to hear every single detail. I recently heard a story where somebody went into the Rebbe who had actually spent some time at the Rebbe's father, because the Rebbe left, when the Rebbe's father had died, the Rebbe hadn't seen the Rebbe's father for over 20 years already. So he wanted to hear things about the Rebbe's father, to the point that the Rebbe asked this person, do you remember how the table faced in his dining room? Did it face one way, or did it face another way? Where was his chair? Where did it do with it? So he wanted to know every single detail, whatever he could possibly learn about. I just heard recently also another story where there was a farbrengen with Rabbi Baruch Schneur. Rabbi Baruch Schneur was a big chassid of the Rebbe, and he also spent many years in jail in Russia. But when he came to Chabad, he became the mashpia in Chabad. And on one Chof Av, he had a farbrengen. This Rabbi Baruch Schneur also spent some time in Yartzait and was with the Rebbe's father, whether it was for a couple of months or whatever it happened to be. And at farbrengen in Chabad, he told a story about the Rebbe's father. So I heard this from his grandson, Rabbi Baruch grandson, his name is Zelda. So he said the following, that after the farbrengen, he wrote up a letter to the Rebbe that my grandfather farbrengened last night in Chabad, and he wrote about, the people over there in the farbrengen that we had. There was a beautiful farbrengen, and then my grandfather even told a story about Rebbe Levi, and went on to tell about what went on at the farbrengen. Farbrengen was over. Right after the farbrengen, his grandson sent in this report to the Rebbe. In the middle of that night, his grandson, Sholom, gets a call from Rabbi Groner. And Rabbi Groner tells Sholom, wakes him up, and he says, I know I woke you up, but the Rebbe wants to know what the story was. He wrote that, he told the story about my father, but to the Eibishter, and in our case we have to bring joy and happiness to the Rebbe, and as we'll go on with this farbrengen, being a particularly the first yartzait of Sholom. You all know a young little boy, but at the same time, from everything that we know about him, and from the little bit, should I say, from the little bit that we know about him, from those that knew him, they were able to see already, as the expression is, butzim likan fridiyah. Great people are seen and recognized even when they're young about their greatness, about their commitment to so many things of Yiddishkeit. And there's no question that he was a star, continues to be a star, continues to be somebody that we all need to be learning from in our commitment in the ways that we can. The Rebbe once said, the Rebbe writes in a letter, when somebody passed away very young, and they wrote to the Rebbe about their child, they passed away very young, the Rebbe said that this was such a special neshama, and this neshama was able to fulfill whatever the mission that he had to fulfill in this world, he was able to fulfill it in so little time, and then they actually wanted it back. So again, as difficult and as challenging as it is, and the fact that in spite of the challenge, the family continues to go on to make farbrengen and to inspire everybody else, that only tells us about the strength that we take, beginning from Rebbe Levi, and in our case, happens to be the same yartzait of Rebbe Levi, the yartzait of Sholom, and the other yartzaits that we'll hear about soon. Rabbi Menachem will share with us in a moment about another yartzait, correct?
No, it's okay.
No, I missed it. No. Yeah. And the Eibishter should help the Chaim that we should be able to share in simchas, freilichenheit, gesundheit. We should only need a continued inspiration, as the Rebbe once wrote. The Rebbe once wrote, actually to Rabbi Oldtime, way back when, the Rebbe wrote that he wants that the Alter Rebbe comes through Pittsburgh, he should be able to look around and be comfortable that he's coming through a community where he has Chassidim, where he sees shameless of Chassidus on the floors, because everybody's learning, everybody's davening. Baruch Hashem, we have a beautiful community that continues to grow in so many different ways. And the Eibishter should help. We should continue to bring lots and lots of Yiddish and Siddish and Achas to the Rebbe. Amen. You want to share something, or you want to talk?
Yeah, go for it.
All I did is just recognize it's the day. I wasn't planning to take over the program. Observing the yartzeit of my father, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak. So have in mind as we're saying the l'chaims and and the different things, it's important to. I was told it's important, especially eat and drink things and with the brachas and whatnot, just to keep in mind. So that energy is now entering here too. So I just want to say l'chaim and the memory of Okay, starts tonight. So anyway, Chaim Meir ben Avraham Yitzchak.
Okay, at this point we're going to call upon Rabbi Markel, a mashpia in our community, so to be a mashpia in the newly started Beis Medrash in our community. That's going to be starting in Mirz Hashem next week. It should be Ba'atzlacha Rabbo Muflaga. What? And we'll ask Rebbe David to share with us a few thoughts on the specialty of the day from Rebbe Levi's perspective, from Sholom's perspective, and on.
I didn't know what I do. When I agreed to farbrengen, I didn't realize there would be a mic at a whole hall. I thought we'd be farbrengen like it usually is in the plate in Zal, Hamish. To stand by a podium, I feel like I'm giving a lecture, a sermon, and not necessarily in the tone of a farbrengen. And I apologize if I naturally fall into the trap of a lectern, of going into sermon mode. But if I do so, somebody throw something at me and remind me that it's a Chassidic farbrengen. You got me? That is an ordained here. But the boys play ball here the whole day. It's usually closed. I think you're allowed al pi halach to throw balls at me. But food, al tashkis. You won't make a shalom about tashkis. We all know that Chof Av, Chof Menachem Av, marks the passing, the Yom Istalkos, the yartzait of the Rebbe's father. Generally, when we think about the Rebbe's father or a yartzait, there's two ways, four ways, two that are four maybe, or two that are three, in exponential ways that we could think about the event. And this is true in Yud Shvat to a certain extent, or Chof Shvat to a certain extent. The Yud Tes Kislev, if you're perhaps a real Mekusher, but most of us, it's generally by the Yomi de Pagra, these days, these special days in the Rebbe's life, like Chof Shvat or Chof Menachem Av, there's two ways to look at that. It's compounded by the uniqueness of Rebbe Levi's personality, in and of itself, that he also was he's a confounding person. Who is he? The Rebbe's father. He's a tzaddik in his own right. He was a confusing entity, individual. He had a certain mystique around him, as Rabbi Rosenfeld alluded to previously a little bit. But there's generally, what I'm getting to is that these two modalities that we can look at today are that it's the hilula of a great tzaddik, of a special individual, and the father of the Rebbe of Dor Hashvi, of our Rebbe. And then there's a simple, more human, more soft perspective. It's Pashat the Rebbe's Tata. That the Rebbe, it's a day that the Rebbe lost a father. And there's nothing besides the awesome individuality of how great the Rebbe's father was in and of himself. He was also a father of a little boy, who grew up to be a man, who grew up to be a Rebbe. And that father, the Rebbe became a Yosim from his father on the day of Chof Menachem Av. And that relationship you hear throughout the Rebbe's letters, throughout the Rebbe's, whenever the Rebbe spoke about the Rebbe, about his father on Chof Menachem Av, or even the letters when he once got a picture of the Rebbe, of his father. And he looked at the picture and he said, he wrote on the picture, doesn't the Tata? This is the father, this is my father, which means his father had gone through so much tragedy, so much torture, that his face had been barely recognizable. It's a little less well known, but perhaps known to some, that this pain and the care that we know that the Rebbe exemplified was the Rebbe towards his mother in this parasha. The Rebbe, we know the yartzait, we know now that the yartzait, the Yom Elula of the Rebbe's father is Chof Menachem Av. But initially, it wasn't entirely clear what the day of the yartzait was. It was either Chof Aleph Av, Chof Beis Menachem Av. And the Rebbe tried to find out, he tried to search to figure out what day is the Rebbe, what day is his father's yartzait, but he didn't ask the single individual who knew for certainty. He didn't ask his mother. He never, throughout the lifetime of his mother, asked her the day of the yartzait. Even though Rebbetzin Rada Sima came in Tafshid Zayin in 1957, he had the opportunity to ask, but he didn't ask. More so, the Rebbe instructed Chassidim, when they spoke to his mother, to never bring up the time that he was in Chile, to never bring up the time that he was in Al-Matah. It was an entirely painful memory for the Rebbetzin Rada, as is clear in her Rishimis, in her diaries, that it was an incredibly terrible, painful time to see her husband in such a way. And whenever she writes about it, and she wrote about it with Mesiras Nefesh, she writes how hard it is to think about it, how hard it is, how painful it is to write about it. As a Rebbe, the sensitivity of a child towards his mother, a person who not only the mitzvah of Kibbud Av, but the love towards his mother, he never put his mother in that pain to find out what that day is. So you can imagine a person of that stature, a person of that sensitivity to every individual in Klal Yisrael, how tragic and how painful. Somebody who has such a heart to be broken, that the Rebbe knew the godless of his father, both as a father and both with that as a father. And the Rebbe writes in a letter that he sees clearly that the Rebbe Levi's life was cut short due to the communists, due to what they did to him. It was incredibly painful for the Rebbe. And we could hear throughout when the Rebbe spoke about Chof Av, it was always painful. Even Tafshid Lamed Dalet, I was listening to a Sikha today, and you could hear the Rebbe's pain in the voice. 30 years later, the Rebbe was still searching. You can hear the Rebbe, he's articulating that clearly in the Sikha, that this is a tragedy for a Yachid, and I'm still searching for the Nechama, I'm still searching for the comfort. And in that context, the Rebbe brings up, speaks about the Sikha makes the siyum on Makos of the famous Gemara of Akiva Nicham Tanu. I think all of Klal Yisrael, particularly this year, is searching for Nechama. Klal Yisrael, our personal community, tragedies in our community, but there's not, I think, a single soul amongst Klal Yisrael, in this hall for certainly, who hasn't cried this year, not only for a public pain, not only for a pain of our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael, but really our tragedy, our own pain, our own loss. That each of us feels that loss of the terrible situation of Simchas Torah, Tafshin Pei Daled. We all feel it. And the Rebbe, this Sikha, the Rebbe launches on a very fascinating point of view. The Rebbe speaks about, I'm going to talk about the pain of a Yachid, my own pain, the Rebbe says. The pain of Rabbi Akiva, in the example that he's talking about, and from that Yachid, we can learn from the Klal. From a personal pain, we can learn from the Klal. So all this, the entire Jewish people this year were searching. Where's I was listening to the Sikha today, and the Rebbe was making a siyum on Makos, Tafshid Lamed Daled, for Chof Av, and the Rebbe was talking about that Akiva Nicham Tanu. That Akiva Necham Tanu. What is that Akiva Necham Tanu? What is that Akiva Necham Tanu? In order to explain that, I want to step back to an earlier Sikha of the Rebbe of Chof Menachem Av Tafshin Chof Av. Chof Menachem Av Tafshin Chof Av was a bit of an interesting year in the history of the knowledge of Rebbe Levi. As Rabbi Rosenfeld mentioned before, the Rebbe was, every detail of Rebbe Levi's life was precious to him. And there was indeed a 3-volume book authored on Rebbe Levi that the Rebbe asked to be written on him. And the Rebbe said that every single thing that you find about Rebbe Levi, put in the book. Every detail you can find. And I think that there's both a particular natural reaction over there. That every child, every person who wants to retain that connection, you look for every memory, you look for every detail. You want to retain that memory. But there's also the Rebbe sincerely believed that every detail of Rebbe Levi's life is a lesson for us. There's actually, the Rebbe mentions this in this sikha that I mentioned before, Chof Av, Tafshin Chof Hey. The Rebbe speaks about a reshima that came from Rebbe Levi just a few days before. The Rebbe said, I had gotten a pile of papers that came from Russia, that it's possible that the person who sent me these papers didn't even know what he's sending me. He didn't even know that there's any connection to me with these papers. There's papers. In these papers, the Rebbe says, I found writing from my father. The Rebbe is very emotional. The Rebbe chokes up many times in the sikha. The Rebbe cries throughout the sikha. And the paper that was found is actually one of the most famous documents of the Rebbe Levi in exile. And it's a famous reshima, and a tragic reshima, and an awesome reshima. And that the Rebbe explained many times. The Rebbe asked to be printed, and we have it today. And the Rebbe explained it a little bit in the sikha. The Rebbe starts the sikha, and he says like this. He said the reshima begins, this note from Rebbe Levi begins like as follows. It says, Ani Levi Yitzchak ben Rachel Zelda, I, Levi Yitzchak, the son of Rachel Zelda. I was in 5 prisons. I was in a total of in prison for 306 days. I was here, and I was there, and I arrived in Chile. And Rebbe Levi Yitzchak goes through every single detail of himself, of his imprisonment, of his identity, of his lineage, of who he comes from and who he is. It says it's all harshness. My life is all gvuras. It's all the toughest severities of the worst of the. I'm just a total. All yisurim, all tragedy happens to me. That's essentially what he says. He said, "I'm Levi." Levi is the idea of gvuras. Levi, kill your brother. There's a gvura there. Levi, tzad small. The side of Levim that there's. He says, "I'm son of Yitzchak." Yitzchak, we know is gvura. It says Rachel is gvura because it's the idea of the 4th leg of Malchus, and Malchus is Ikerdinim. Not to get into all the Kabbalah, but he goes and explains the 5 prisons of it, the 5 gvuras. It's harsh. Move the mic a little further. But it's my life is harsh. That's what Rebbe Levi Yitzchak says. It's tragic. It's tragic. And he explains it al pi Torah. So when the Rebbe explained this letter, it's this reshima, and the Rebbe is crying when he's explaining it. But one of the things that the Rebbe says over there, which is pertinent to what we said before, he said that the Rebbe said a certain chidush about how to understand Rebbe Levi's Torah. He said every single line, he tried to write as many lines as possible. Every surah, every line. Wait till the mic. No. Every line is precious, and therefore Rebbe Levi would put if I could say some Torah and I can add a line into Torah, I'm going to do it there. And every detail the Rebbe says, every line transforms the entire perspective of everything. Because if you add a letter, the entire picture is transformed, and therefore every single detail is important. But what do we see over here about Rebbe Levi? What was the Rebbe explaining about Rebbe Levi? There's some people who turn tragedy who turn Torah into tragedy. Everything that happened to him is a tragedy. Rebbe Levi his perspective was really the reversed. His perspective, Rabbi Levi's perspective was, how do I turn tragedy into Torah? Which means every single detail that happens to me is a part of Torah. Is a part of it, which means the fact that the Yisurim happened to me, the fact that I was in 5 prisons, and the fact that it's not random. It's not just happenstance that this happened to me. This is part of Torah. They see it like Torah, and they can see all the deepest secrets of reality of how it's supposed to be like that, and how this is truth, and this is the greatest lights of Kabbalah. It's in every single aspect of my life, including the tragedy. The Rebbe launches then into lengthy Sicha, Chof Menachem Av Tafshin Chof Av, explaining grief, explaining tragedy, explaining void. And the Rebbe, in this Sicha, the Rebbe gives a perspective of how we could translate and activate and transform tragedy into grief. And the Rebbe uses the example in last week's Parsha of Chof Menachem Av. In Chof Menachem Av, in the Parshas Eikev generally, and in Parshas Eikev there's the Parsha of Asher Shibarta. And the Eibusher tells Moshe Rabbeinu, write a second pair of luchos. Why? Asher Shibarta. Because you broke the first pair. And the Rebbe asked a simple question, like, what do you keep on reminding the guy about? He broke the luchos. Why are you rubbing it in? Write the second because you broke it, therefore you need to write it. Why do you need to write it? It broke, you gotta write a new one. You broke. Who broke it? You broke it. You broke it, you fix it. Why is the Eibusher driving that point over and over again? And the Rebbe says the reason is because brokenness is not a bug, it's a feature. If we use brokenness properly, if we use our sorrow, our sadness, our voids properly, that could be not only not a source of weakness, that could be our greatest strength, the Rebbe says. The Rebbe quotes the Medrash, it says, if it wouldn't be for the Shaviras HaLuchos, if it wouldn't be for the broken Luchos, Torah would have more or less ended there. They would have gone into Eretz Yisrael. They would be on a much higher level of religiously and mystically, and they wouldn't need to lower the Torah to all the speech. They would have been, whatever would need to be known, you would be able to read Chumash and you'd be able to know it. So there wouldn't be Sifra, there wouldn't be Sifri, there wouldn't be all of Torah Shabbat. There wouldn't have been all of Shas and all of Gemara and all of Chassidus if it wouldn't be for Shviras HaLuchos. So there's one way of explaining it that, as some people explain it, what's the reason why you need so much Torah? Because after the destruction of the Luchos, because it says that if you broke something, in order to get back to that same place, you need so much more effort. You need to get back to the same place. You need to put in so much more effort. But it's not that in the brokenness is a Torah. It's the opposite. In order to fix the brokenness, you need a lot of Torah. There's a certain Torah that you get, but it's not in the brokenness itself. It's not in the brokenness itself. It's not in the pain itself. In order to remedy pain, you need to find simcha, but it's not that pain causes simcha. How could pain cause simcha? But the Rebbe learns much deeper. The Rebbe learns that in the Shavira itself, in that brokenness itself, it creates a void, it creates a vacuum, and that vacuum has no choice in order to function, in order to live, but to pull and to bring, to add so much more oil. Which means the answer to pain, if the way we solve pain, the way we deal with pain, is to use it as a catalyst for simcha. To use it as a catalyst to add in more Torah and more Torah and more Torah and more Torah. And more light and more light and more light. Which means in the brokenness itself, the Rebbe says, the Rebbe quotes the Lashon, there's nothing more ganz than it's a brach in the hearts. It is Sicha, the Chof Menachem Av. The Rebbe said there's certain people that they're stuck in their situation of life. They want to be a chassid, they want to be a yid, they want to do the right thing, but they're shavi b'yad yitzrov, they're not able to. For whatever reason, they're trapped in their addictions, in their identity, in their sack of potatoes, whatever their situation is, we all have the life situation that it falls into that we can't get out of ourselves. We can't get out of the situation of life that we're in. But in that moment, the Rebbe says a person might give a crest. They might say, I wish I could do more. The Rebbe says that itself is the greatest light. That light itself is transforming the negativity, and that the zochiyos, this doinus nasalos kezochis, our negativity transformed into good. And the Rebbe says if our brokenness would be revealed, if the shivrei luchis would be in the arein, the churban could never have happened. We see this in the life of Rebbe Levi. In the life of Rebbe Levi, like Rabbi Rosenfeld mentioned, Rebbe Levi was sent to Chile in Kazakhstan, in an area that was devoid of Yidden. He was broken physically, emotionally, was broken in every way. He was sick at that time already. He had Yanamachli, he had cancer, and he was a broken man. And he had every right to live. Just to live as a Yid and to try to live as a Jew as he could. But that's not what Rebbe Levi did. It's amazing that the Russian government, they understood Rebbe Levi's power of personhood so much that they had a clause in the exile, and this is why he ended up in Kazakhstan to begin with, not to be around Jews. Can't be around another Jew. There needs to be send them to Ekveld, send them to Timbuktu. I was in Kazakhstan this past year. Already Almaty, there's nothing there. Chile is really nothing there. He was living in squalor with mud and flies and mosquitoes, and there was nothing there. It wasn't a village or a city. It was a bunch of huts with a bunch of people that didn't even speak Russian, backwards, people that didn't know anything about anything. They was living in it was a crazy world. And he was there, a Jew, and he somehow managed to find other Jews around him and inspire them. That they were the first time the person was about a Pesach Seder, first time people fasted a Yom Kippur. He would dance in Simchas Torah. He had no Sefer Torah with him. The way that Rebbetzin Rada describes his dancing, his Simcha, he said you could imagine that he was in the Katrina's lab. You could imagine that he was at the height of his Rabbanos. And then at the end of his life, 4 months, approximately 4 months or so, he was in Almaty. He was already sick. He was already almost on his deathbed. And from there, for 4 months, he transformed the city. If you read the Maises of Rebbetzin Rada, which he describes it, he brought Sholom to the community. He made Balei people, the youth that were so distant away, that were so distant from anything that had drank the communist Kool-Aid. They came to his house every night to listen to drink in the words of his Torah that he spoke for hours. Why? Because this was the character of Rebbe Levi. Rebbe Levi was every situation. He not only persevered, he not only lived, he not only continued to be strong, but he was able to transform that greatest darkness into greatest light. And we see till today the payers of what he planted, alive and well, both in Kazakhstan and throughout the world. And I think this lesson is for us in our personal life, for me in my own life, and for all of us, that we all know challenges, we all know sorrow, we all know grief, we all have brokenness in our lives. There's not a person who doesn't have brokenness. And the question is, what do I do with my brokenness? What do I do with my challenges? And Rebbe Levi teaches us that not only do we have the ability to live with our brokenness, but to make our brokenness our greatest source of light. So l'chaim, we should go into Chof Av, and already Chof Av, we're already thinking about Elul, we should already think about Ksima Tova. We should truly be able to transform the letters of all negativity to oisiyos, geluyos of Toiv, Hadir, V'Anigla, for Chasima Tova, Toiv, Hadir, V'Anigla, to all of Klal Yisrael. You don't have to go back.
Continue. Maybe Mendel wants to say something.
I want to say something. I would also might be better if the women could be participating. Should I go?
Are there any women left?
Should I continue over from there?
Let him say another one. For the women, they feel more comfortable. Okay. One more time up there.
Fine.
After you finish.
Bashkacha Pratis, one of the when you think about Rebbe Leivik, there's primarily farbrengen about Rebbe Leivik, the pastors. Oh, I don't have any mashke. Chaim. When you think about Rebbe Leivik's Torah, when you think about Rebbe Leivik's Torah, an aspect of the Rebbe's Torah that that the Rebbe adopts from Rebbe Leivik's Torah is the aspect of randomness, the idea of randomness. Huh? I think it would be from here. They're all on their phones anyway. Saifi, they're all on their phones. What? Saifi, they're all on their phones.
Hey, don't say it. Don't say it. Just.
The answer they're on their phones.
The phone. You have to bring it even closer.
They're on the Zoom.
Wait, the microphone. You have to get the microphone. Oh, sit down. You're good. Yeah, all right. Purpose value. Is there a wireless microphone? This is better.
It makes it worse at times. It's like they're all talking and they're all on their phones. I don't mind.
They deserve a break.
They deserve it. Chaim Shalom. What do I need a mic for? I will have a loud voice.
Start until get off the phone. No, the microphone's off.
Look at it.
You thought it was on the whole time. It's for the camera.
Okay. So one of the things we see in Rebbe Leivik's Torah, this feels like not a Chassidic farbrengen. It feels like something else. Something else entirely. I don't know what. I don't know. Be Magda, a symposium.
Something else.
Yeah.
Look at the description. We put symposium.
Symposium literally means because that's the symposium. You need to be a great philosopher to verstehen that it was much of a party. Or you need to actually have read Plato, the symposium. Huh? That's what it was. He sat there on the couches and he writes. And he got shikker and he got drunk and he throw up. And this one walked out.
The women, you're going to lose the men too.
Okay. It needs to make me fun for everyone. I need to make Eli Rubin happy.
No, see, it's
already a hard job.
I tried.
Anyway, l'chai. We're going to start now, Chaval. We have Bashkacha Pratis. Today's Rambam. actually discusses Chof Av, today's Shloisha Prakim. And Zichir, one of the things that Rebbe would be farbrengen Chof Av by Av, one of the things that we'll talk about is that the Heilige Rambam becoming Nishba Merkin. How could he not notice that today's Rambam discusses Chof Av? Today's Rambam in Shloisha Prakim, it says about that the time of Korban Eitzim, it said that there was families that that every year they would bring Eitzim to the Mizbeach, and that day that they would bring Eitzim to the Mizbeach, halacha today's Rambam, they would make a yontiv, and it would be also in kindness, and they wouldn't say tachanun, and that day was called Yom Korban Eitzim. So if you look at the Gemara about Yom Korban Eitzim, one of the days is the day of Chof Av, and the Rebbe spoke about it many years. That the day of Chof Av is the Yom Korban Eitzim, and the machlokes is to the families. It's either a family from Ben Yishai. It's for sure a family from Ben Yishai. It's either a family from Yom Ben Tzruya or a family from Bnei David. But they would bring korban to the Mizbeach. One of the things that we see that the Rebbe adopted from Rebbe Levi's Torah, especially more and more the later years, in order to understand the Rebbe's Torah, you need to appreciate Rebbe Levi. You need to appreciate his tzugay, his perspective to Torah, and it's all-encompassing perspective to Torah, and what's das made. So the hektim, I'm going to say a surprising, maybe not surprising, but then perhaps explain. The Torah of Rebbe Levi is the Torah of randomness, almost the Torah of absurdity, to use an even more radical terminology. That the Rebbe, you'll knock your socks off. In the later years,
What are you translating?
In the later years, I'm not translating anything.
So what is he trying to say?
I'm saying, let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. I'm not translating a mime. Ich sag etwas.
That's the problem.
Not
Paraphrase and
So, mikra.
Okay.
David, in a minute,
No,
David, in a minute, they're going to tell you what your opinion is, okay?
know what it's worth. Anyway, so what everyone started Sikha and say today is Tuesday, and Tuesday is the day after Monday, and Monday is 3 days after Sunday. That's Chazaka, and Sunday comes after Monday, and it's Tuesday, and and today's parsha happens to be in Shlishi, and the parsha is Shlishi, and it happens to be the Rambam starts like this, and you're making a whole, and from this we learn the whole lesson of Dvarim Ha'onim Al Hashah. This is the Onim Al Perek, because today is Tuesday, and it's the day after yesterday. It's Chof Av, the day of Chof Chassidic. It's Chof Chassidic comes after Chof Zayin Sivan. Chof Chassidic. The famous Chof Chassidic. Chof Nissan. Chof Zayin Nissan. It comes after Chof Vav Nissan, which comes after Chof Hey Nissan, and therefore it's a Chazaka. Therefore, it gives a Ibn. Like, what do you mean? It's a whole different way of learning Torah. That you look in any Sifrei Torah of Gedolei Yisrael, it's not a general derech halimud. It's not a derech hamachshav. It's not a derech hadrush. But it was in the Torah of Rebbe Levi. You read about Rebbe Levi's Torah. Rebbe Levi, it says if you read there's a Torah list of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, and there's a bais of Elder Chassidim, and for Rebbe Levi, he would say Torah about everything. Everything is Torah. So he could be sitting, and somebody once told him, you could say Torah about everything, say Torah about the chair. And he would connect, he was the drasha, he connected the chair about the drasha, and the person who's sitting next to him about the drasha, the glasses that he's wearing about the drasha. Everything that he's saying, everything is Torah. For him, the world was Torah. That was his reality. And therefore, it's not to Levic, it was faked. It's like what we were talking about before. But it's not that when we realize there's a mindset that Rebbe Levi he got smicha from Reb Chaim Brisk. Huh? Reb Chaim Brisk? No. So the Rebbe Rashab wanted him to go to get smicha by Rebbe Levi. The Rebbe said the story. The Rebbe laughs a few times in the story how that Rebbe Chaim made him crazy because he was a Schneerson. He made the questions harder for him because he was a Schneerson. And he didn't give him an easy time. He knew he saw it a Lubavitcher cup, and the way the Seder was, then there would be a shimush, but a real shimush. He would sit by the Rav for a couple of weeks, live it, and people would come and ask Shilas, and he would turn to the Rebbe and say, "No, how would you add to the questions?" So once the Rebbe says this story. We can listen to the farbrengen. It's also Muga the story. Once was Sukkot, and with Sukkot, and somebody came in on Shabbos, and they said that they forgot to make an Erev Chatzedek. The Sukkah's in the courtyard, and they forgot to make an Erev Chatzedek. And therefore, the Vashayla, could they carry to the Sukkah? Could they use the communal Sukkah or not? So Reb Chaim turns to Rebbe Levi, and he says, "Nu Levi, what do you think?" And he answers. Rebbe Levi answers. He says the Sukkah Levi is ma'arif. The Sukkah itself is the Erev. Because what's the point of a Sukkah? The point of the Sukkah is the Ru'in Kol Yisrael Leishim Sukkah Achas. You get to the Sukkah already. You're making it a place to be kavua that you should be able to sit and eat there together. And that's the whole point of the Erev, to set a kaviyas makim for a chila. Therefore, you don't need an Erev because the Sukkah itself is the Erev Chatzedek. And Chaim was astounded. He was amazed. He said, "Wow, it's beautiful." He said, "A zayin luyisha cup in the vaslikstov. You have such a great head. And what do you think of? I think of Kabbalah and a shad. Yeah, a shad. A zayin kuta cup. You have such a great head. And what do you learn in Kabbalah and Chassidus, Sakta, China? Like, what is this stuff?" Rabbi Rosenfeld mentioned before how the Rebbe printed a lot, or all of Rebbe Levi's Ksavim. One of the things we don't realize, and we were talking before a little bit about the human Mesiras Nefesh, on a human level, that the Rebbe had to print these documents. These documents are private documents. The Rebbe printed letters to him. The Rebbe Levi's letter to him about his chasana, about brachas for children, what the Frierdiker Rebbe said about you by the chasana. This thing that the Rebbe didn't want to say to his father, and his father writes a letter to him. He said, "Chazakta What did Alter say? What did he say about you? What did the Frierdiker Rebbe say about you? What were the gifts? What were the presents? What were the these were personal letters, brachas for children. That was personal life. The Rebbe said, "This is so precious for me that Chassidim should have something in Rebbe Levi. I'm going to give it over. I'm going to give it to the Chassidim." One of the interesting things that is in those letters is a letter of a critique of the Rebbe's Derech HaLimud. There's a critique that Rebbe Levi, the Rebbe said a drasha. The Rebbe said a pilpul to Rebbe Levi, and Rebbe Levi is commenting on it like a father does. The father was Rebbe's only primary teacher, person who really taught him Torah and a derech in Kabbalah and Chassidus and Nigla. And in that letter, the Rebbe Levi tells him, he said like this. He says, you should add Kabbalah. He said, your pilpul, your drash, I don't know if you use lashon pilpul or drash. He says, it's generally good. It's good. You write well, and your chedushim noim, and it's better than you think. I think he says even. But he says there's one chisarin. You're not miyasid. You don't base what you're writing enough on Kabbalah. You don't add salt and pepper. You don't add Kabbalah. He says, and the reason is because if you add Kabbalah, then it'll be emes. Then it'll be true. Now it's a good svara, but it's not emes. So when you think about the emes and seichel and Kabbalah and why and understanding Rebbe Levi's derech halimud of Kabbalah, I think this pithy statement of Rebbe Levi, add Kabbalah because then it'll be emes. that sheds light onto Rebbe Leivik's derech halimud in general, and it helps you understand Rebbe Leivik's unique perspective of Kabbalah, because Rebbe Leivik was not a normative Kabbalah, so we'll hopefully get into a little bit. In one place, Rebbe Leivik says, he said that there's a difference between, a lot of people think that seichel is emes, that seichel, intellect, and emes are synonyms. The Rebbe says no, the Rebbe Leivik says over there, said they're not, seichel and emes are not the same thing. Seichel is seichel, and emes is emes. Seichel, he says, is from chachma. Emes is an atik. Emes is makif. In another place, he said the chiluk between emes and seichel, he says the difference between the two mems. There's the shlos mem. The shlos mem is one makif. It's a makif. It's a box. It's a circle, but it's a squared circle. But he says emes is the samach. Emes is a circle. Because what is emes? Emes is a circle. When you think about logic, when you think about the mind, when you think about seichel, we're usually convinced that seichel is square by definition. It's logic. This proves that proves this. It's either this, it's a binary. It's either this or that. But that's the vart emes. Circular logic is not logical, but an emes that isn't a circle is not true. Right? If it's not circular, if it's not all-encompassing, if the beginning doesn't lead you back to the end to the beginning, and the middle to that place, and it doesn't express itself in every single thing, then it's not true. Which means that's Rebbe Leivik's perspective of how he learned Torah. When he was learning Torah, when he was learning Kabbalah, when he was adding gematrias, it's all an expression of emes. But his perspective is that everything in Torah says that the world is created with tzaruf oises of Torah, therefore everything is Torah. If in Torah it writes the name of the city where this Tana came from, that this word is a part of Torah, and it's meduyik, and it must be that the emes of the thing needs to be expressed there. And if it's emes, then it's also going to be expressed in even numerics of the thing, that even the gematrias of the thing is going to be expressed in. And therefore most Mekubalim, Rebbe Leivik is almost an anti-Kabbalist. Which means the normative Mekubal is somebody who's escaping the exoteric Torah Hadigla to go delve into Kabbalah. He's living in a world of Yechudim. He's a mystic. He's separated from modernity, separated from this physical world, and he's living in a world of Kabbalah. If you read about Rebbe Leivik, what totally took people about Rebbe Leivik is Rebbe Leivik was able to talk about any single subject. The scientists would come to him, the mathematicians would come to him, the atheists would come to him. You could talk to him about any subject, and he was fascinating in the subject. He was well versed in the subject. He was brilliant in the subject. Why? That's not a Kabbalist. A Kabbalist is not going to be upfront into what the physics of the day, the mathematics of the day, the politics of the day, whatever it is of the day, whatever the day thing. He's living removed. That's the general way where we see Kabbalah. But the Rebbe Leivik was entirely opposite. His Kabbalah, he can have Kabbalah and Shas. You're explaining Shas, every single word. Me and the boys over here, we learned but apetrupis and the laws of apetrupis and the laws of avodim and karka and shibudim, how apetrupis goes on matat, apis rupis, shiva rufus is master sar and sara olam and nar and the whole Kabbalah based on pashut halachas of Gemara, stories of Gemara. Pashut, you learn Gemara. You can learn Shas, how we all learn Shas, but for him it was a Gadsal, it was a whole different Shas. And that's emes. Emes. You have it. Emes is emes havai la'olam. It's kol hayom hayelikecha. It's if you're makubal in the shul and whatever you are in work, it's not emes. It's not Kabbalah. It's not Torah. The Rebbe's Rebbe Leivik's Torah, and one of the things that the Rebbe took from the Rebbe's Torah, the Rebbe gave us in the latest years, the Torah that the Rebbe spoke about, more pronounced in those years, is that there's no detail of our lives There's no detail of that seem trivial, that seem totally uninteresting about what we're learning in Chumash, what the day it is, whatever the things that we just take for granted in life. Today's happens to be Chof Aleph, Chof Beis Av, or Chof Aleph Av, or okay, I'm going to make my whole life perspective is going to be based on that. With Rebbe Levi and to the Rebbe, it's not only that all these details matter, but I could take the Eben Wasa Boinim, and I could take that point that seems anomalous and trivial or just nothing, and I could show you that over there, that is the most significant detail. The reality is that all our lives are like that. To be a tzaddik ever getting on the presence in every single detail. And through learning the Torah of Rebbe Levi, and every name is significant, and having appreciation for the significance of everything transforms the way that we live our lives, to live a life that's a true life of the Chassid, that's emes havai la'olam, and it's not a bifurcated reality, that's the Gemara reality, the Chassid's reality, the work reality, and the life reality, but a holistic, cohesive, singular perspective of existence, one that all of Torah and all of life is to proclaim the singular statement of emes havai la'olam.
I just want to make a quick mention that an official announcement that we're kicking off from Mirz Hashem over the next week or so. We're kicking off the Sholom mitzvah tank for Pittsburgh. That Pittsburgh should have a full-time mitzvah tank. The idea is not just for it to sit. The idea is not for it just to sit. Really, this does something. The idea is not just for the mitzvah tank. It's not just going to be sitting there for Chanukah and like Adrabah. That first of all, with the new Zal, the Bachim are going to be going out regularly on Tzayim, as well as we're going to look to do a new initiative with the Balabatim. It's about time we started going out more on Tzayim also. And so Mirz Hashem, we all know that anyone who knew Shalom Barrow was familiar with the camouflage vest because he was a soldier of the Rebbe. So it's about time we got Shalom Barrow a tank, so we got a proper weapon. And that from Pittsburgh should go out, Achotz Mayonis to the whole world, and bring Mashiach Tzidkenu right away, and that we should be able to dance with Shalom Be'ini Basar again in the Yerushalayim and HaKedesh Mashiach Tzidkenu. So just this is the official announcement of this initiative, this campaign, which is going to be launched over the next week or so. The Thanksgiving campaign.
You think I'm a record move, I can do record move, I can do. You might tattoo. You might tattoo. And I was reminded, I spent this year, Chamisha Osir B'Shvat, to around Chof Shvat in Almata. Chamisha B'Shvat is the day that the Rebbe Levi arrived in Almata. He was only there for 5 days before he went and took another long, lengthy train ride to Chile. But that's what we spent. We had a Hachayal there. We learned to talk to the Rebbe Levi, and we learned the Rebbe Levi Zelda, the farbrengen Rebbe Levi. We went to the Tzemach Rebbe Levi. It was a tremendous experience. Mumlat suggested for everybody, if you want to have a Pluftik Shabbos, go to Kazakhstan. But one of the discussions there was on a pan. How do you write? Wie schreibt man the pan? The gate rein zum Rebbe Levi. The minig is you give a we write a pan there. It's a cloud with flagged with I write a pan there. And there's huge nissim. There's been huge nissim throughout the years. It's printed already the book that the Rebbe commissioned. Nissim getting out of Russia. Incredible nissim. Fires by the Tzien, and I think there's big stories. But it's a special Tzien. It's known for Yeshuas and Brachis, and the Rebbe also, on a personal level, Pasha appreciated that people would go and visit his father, something that the Rebbe never was able to do himself. But we start with the pump. That was the question. So in the I heard from Rabbi Levi Shapiro, my Rosh Hashiva, that I heard it at Betzivos, but one of the places I heard it from is also him, that over the years, the Rebbe's incorporating the Rebbe Levi into the Chabad Shalsheles time frame became more and more pronounced. The Mevinim, the Yoidei Dovber, they say that it started in Lamed Daled. And the Lamed Daled was soon after the passing of Shmuel Vitten. As long as Shmuel Vitten was alive, the Rebbe didn't bring Rebbe Levi into the Maimonim. But afterwards, the Rebbe brought him to the Maimonim. And the Rosh Hashanah Maimonim, Yud Shvat Maimonim. We know B'chlal, whoever the Rebbe mentions in a Maimer it's not a Talei Dovber. Didn't we make a big thing that once or twice, a few times, the Rogatchover is brought in a Maimer. It's a big thing. The Rogatchover, the Maimer Chassidus, Chiddush. But the Rebbe didn't only bring Rebbe Levik's Torah the Maimer, but the Rebbe mentioned Rebbe Levik in central Maimer. It means till Maimonim like Rosh Hashanah or Yud Shvat, where the Rebbe had a long-standing, long-held custom that every Pasuk Legani, you mentioned all the Rebbeim from the Baal Shem Tov down, and Rosh Hashanah as well, all the Rebbeim. And the reason is both of these things, and you could say a Rosh Hashanah Maimer is the Binyan HaMalchus of the year. So we bring the Binyan, we boit the Malchus of the Shiva Torahs of Chabad, how you bring the Hoshana. But the Yud Shvat Maimonim, the Basel Legani Maimonim, were the Binyan HaMalchus of that year of the Rebbe's Chassidus of Der Shvi, the Rebbe's, we boit Der Shvi. And the Der Shvi is built on an edifice, on a building, and the stages, right? And that's how the Rebbe's first Basel Legani Maimer commences. Shvi or Rishon, there's a seventh, there's a first, and we're continuing. That's it's a progression. Therefore, that progression is pertinent. But when we see that the Rebbe brought in later years, the Rosh Hashanah, the Basel Legani Maimer as well, on all the years, the Rebbe mentioned his father as well. Or the same thing as the Nigunim. The Nigunim, sing the Nigunim for Rebbeim. Rebbe Levi. Right? We sing all the Nigunim. It's a serious, it's a Maimer. The Tzini is a serious thing. We're speaking about also Rebbe Levi is there. So, what is Rebbe Levi's placement in this? And especially since we know people who've The Yodim, the knowers know that historically there was some ambiguity regarding the Rebbe Levi during the time of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Did the Rebbe Levi see himself as a Rebbe? Right? You mentioned that the Rebbe even mentioned he was the last Schneerson but in the later years he accepted Panim, he gave brachas to Nissan. What does get it? So one time I heard from Rabbi Levi Shapiro that they wrote Admor Taka. They wrote Admor. Rebbe crossed it off. So Rabbi Levi Shapiro was talking about a man in the Agvas Nefesh. The Rebbe needs to erase the Admor about his father. But so how did they write so the way the Shliach in the Hoib Shliach, Yishai Cohen, the way he writes it in Kazakhstan, the Shliach Al-Mata, he always writes Chak Oviv Shel Chak Admor Hamor Da'as. This is Hamor Da'as. Hamor Da'as in Kazakhstan of Al-Mata, that's his gather. Like the Alter Rebbe was the Hamor Da'as, the Rebbe spoke about the Hamor Da'as. That's his, I think to him it's more than a rabbinic gather, but the Hamor Da'as of a plot, Hamor Da'as. He's in charge of the whole path. We are Paskin, and his picture of the world is the. I don't know if all the Chassidim wrote about the Asra. I don't know if that's what I don't know if everybody did his psak, but that's what he wrote. When he reads the Pad Kloli, huh? I'm not saying my side. I for sure agree that as Emes Lamita. I'm saying among the Crown Heitzers that were there, that they've never seen a Shliach B'chlal in their life, and B'chlal they don't know how B'chlal treat Rabbanim or anything. Anyway, the Ikiri is talking about the most important thing. Everything I've covered with the Bardas.
That we enjoy.
All right, Dov, enough with your opinions. Now let's listen to this. Right, we're going to the Chassidic.
Okay, that was thinking that nigga.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chaim. Big Chassidim. Not evaluating. I'm telling you, Bison, the Rebbe said Rebbe Levi, what did you mention? They're not going to give me something. If I know, I'm going to say it eventually. Information. I hear it. I'm not going into it. I'm just saying the raid is Markel. It's made Von was kein nachzubieten, aber für das verstehen. In Lavitalin, they were talking about by Podrovnah has died of Emmet. But the brother that was the Simcha. It was that the Kudah that should be the Simcha. It doesn't mean the Simcha, but should be. Want to turn this part off? Why, Dov? You don't want to hear more complaints?